Good evening and welcome to Light Code Portal podcast. My name is Natasha Ovai and I'm the Dean of Education with Light Language University. I'm here with Anna Noyce, our founder of Light Language University. How are you doing tonight, Anna?
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Good. Well, tonight's topic is on dimensions, and I'm super excited. It's a really interesting topic. I feel like we can have a really good conversation about this one. So, before we get started, though, I wanted to go ahead and mention a little bit about the university, our logo, and our mission statement. Um, our logo is the triangle, which represents mind, body, and spirit. And the gold outline, which you can kind of see the gold outline there, it actually represents the golden ages that we're stepping into. And the silver represents the collective consciousness and awakening. The circles represent the dimensions and us being multidimensional beings. And of course, that beautiful golden phoenix that's coming out of the logo, that phoenix represents us coming out of the Piscean age into the Aquarian age. And you can kind of see the small triangle, that little small triangle actually represents um, the movement of us moving from the Piscean age, from the solar plexus, into the Aquarian age of the heart. Our mission is to inspire others who are awakening and to aid in the imminent growth of conscious awareness of being multidimensional. So I love that. So, Anna, I'm going to go ahead and get started if you're ready. I'm really excited about this topic tonight.
Because it seems to be very popular when the movies are starting to do a lot of things now with multiverses and multi-universes and dimensions.
Absolutely. Like you hear it all the time, especially like in the superhero movies. Although that's not the direction we're going in tonight, but it's fun to think
Who
about.
knows?
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, right. Well, let's see. So what exactly is a dimension, and how do you find one? How do you get there?
So actually, it's very easy to get there because you're always participating in dimensions, whether you're aware of it or not. You're participating on multi levels of dimensions. And so if you think about Russian stacking dolls, do you remember those little dolls that had a doll and then you had a doll, a bigger doll and another doll, and they were all encased within each other? Well, that's kind of like the human being in the physical body, and that we have all these dimensions that are stacked just right here. You don't have to go out up there or outside, for a couple of miles or to try to think of finding a dimension, you know, it's right here. And there's multi universes right here that we're participating in. And it's very exciting because it's just a shift of consciousness that opens up the key to that dimension. It's a thought. It's a process. So most of the time we're daydreaming or we're in alpha brain where we're driving. A lot of us drive in alpha. I know I do. If I'm driving in beta, you need to get out of my way because I won't remember how to drive. so, um, but the alpha knows how to drive very well. The alpha brain knows how to drive. But those are just shifting into different frequencies that the human body responds to, as well as the spirit anatomy responds to, and creates the experience around us. Are you
And
muted?
so, yeah, I was muted. I'm sorry about that. So, what are the different dimensions? Are they still? I mean, let me try again. So we're still creating those dimensions, is what you're saying. We're kind of co-creating those dimensions, right?
Well, some of them are already set, like 3D is kind of set here with the collective consciousness, that mind of all of us that agree that this is the way we participate in this 3D dimension. We define a cup, we defined a chair, piano, all of the things behind you. We define those through our agreement of consciousness. But we also define, and it's almost when you're dreaming, you're also moving into other dimensions that are you're participating in. And so those different dimensions have different, like for instance, we can fly in some of them where you can't fly in 3D, right? I mean, have you ever had one of those where you're flying and it's just amazing and you just feel so free? Or there's things where we're swimming or moving or having these amazing experiences because the rules don't apply like they do in 3D form. Well, Those are parts of what we experience even in the waking, because our daydreams we can access past, present, and future and parts of this lifetime. And just by tapping into a frequency or a wave that takes us into a dimension that opens that portal up, and then we can see the past, present, or future, either lives or experiences that we're having in this lifetime.
That's really incredible. So, like, you think about that, you can pretty much do anything, right? If I mean, you could go or do anything in another dimension.
We do,
In our
right?
dreams, and I mean, anywhere, right? Like, there's no limit to what you can do in
Exactly.
other dimensions, is what you're saying, right?
I like what you said that, because that's also something we're learning about medicine too, because we're understanding we're multidimensional beings. So even though we're healing on the physical layer, we also can tap into the spiritual layer of our anatomy that taps into those multi dimensions that can go back in and shift things or change things, that ripples through time or changes thing in our reality. So those multiverses that we're seeing, yes, we're participating on all the time. And I love that quantum physics is caught up in saying, okay, yes, you're having multiple lives. And then of course, like you said, Marvel is kind of taking it and showing the world, this is kind of what it's like. And it's really cool. You could be this in a second. And there's multiple versions of us having experience, maybe in the 3D, but having different kinds of, the same experience, but different kinds of outcomes. So we get to choose what we step into. And that's how we manifest things in our lives. And that's one of the things that we look at. What do you match? Because if there's multi universes of dimensions around and you're working to win the lottery, do you step into the one that you want to win the lottery, or do you step in the one that you never win the lottery, or do you step in the one, so you really have to see what you're matching. But the trick is too, with working with dimensions, is that there's also that higher self too, that knows what the lessons are, that's bringing in lessons and things that we're working through or experiencing in this lifetime with not only ourselves, but with others in a conscious, community.
I love that. So it means that really and truly, when we go into these other dimensions, I've heard, like you brought up television, for example. I've heard people say they can be scary, or you can get stuck there. Is that true? Can you get stuck there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can get stuck anywhere. You can get stuck, your car can break down and you get stuck on the side of the road. Do you have to stay there? No. No, it's always a choice, or it's always a shift of consciousness that shifts that experience into another experience. So if you're afraid, and let's say that you do get someplace that you're afraid and you're too afraid to move, it's the same thing like being here in the physical realm, where you're hiding in a corner and you're too afraid to get up and move. You may be there for days, even though the danger or something around you is past. So it's really up to you and your experience of whether you want to get up and see if there's something different and move on, move on.
So how would you recommend moving on? Like, if you wake up and you're in the middle of a nightmare, how do you get out of that? How do you move beyond that dimension and pull yourself out of there?
And some people, when you're dreaming, you can change the dream. A lot of us will go back. Or sometimes when you wake up and you go, whoa, did not like that dream, I'm going to go back and change it. You'll go back and change it. Or you may come out of the dream. So you've already shifted out of that dimension into this time frame. And you can make changes, or you can think about it, or it might be a lesson. So yeah. And also when we die, this is interesting too, because when we pass, we're also participating not just in the 3D dimension. We've left the physical body, because the physical body is part of this dimension, but we're also now working more with the spirit anatomy that has access to multi universes. And so how do we get there? It's a shift of consciousness. Let's say that maybe our great grandmother, who we adore, passed away years ago. We just have to think of that person, think of her and think of the love. And immediately we're right there in the dimension wherever she is, which could be multi universes away from where we are at the time. But you're in there in a second.
So that brings me to another question. Like, where would the dimension be? To where would you find like God creator or God consciousness in the dimensions? Is that considered a dimension? And if so, like, is that where heaven is? What people would call heaven?
So it's a good question. A very simple one to is it's the illusion of third dimension is separation from God, creator, oneness, because everything is a part of one. So God, creator, oneness is always a part of any dimension. The only time that we do separate ourselves is when we pull ourselves away or close our eyes and try not to see it. But yeah, I mean, there really isn't no it's like the drop of water in the ocean, trying not to be a part of the ocean. It just is.
So the next, I guess that makes me start to think about like, are there certain dimensions that are dedicated to certain things, like higher realm? Like I've heard people say higher realms and lower realms. Like, are there different levels of dimensions and types of dimensions?
Absolutely. There are billions, trillions, gazillions of dimensions. So we start from 3D and we always think that 3D is a lot of fun because we have a lot more things that are solid. We can play around with or touch, they're more tangible. But that doesn't make any of the other dimensions less real or less tangible, depending on the rules of those dimensions that we participate in. And depending on what kind of vehicle we choose to participate or use as our spacesuit. So, Spirit always says that we've come into this world in our spacesuits, kind of like I think a spaceman out in space, because we have to participate to pick things up or do things. It's hard to be a spirit being and pick something up that's solid. So yeah, then and just different rules, but yes, you can shift. What I guess the other thing that's interesting, and I think we're having different lifetimes. We were talking about the multi universes, and I think there's a movie out called Doctor Strange. Did I say that right? Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
So, and I think the newest movie it does. My husband took me to go see it, and I loved it because it was showing um, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it was showing the different dimensions and how quickly you can move through them. And that's how we move through them. In fact, we move through them so fast that it's so natural that we don't even realize that it's just part of our everyday experience. So when we try to stop and think about it, it blows our mind, or we see it in a movie and we go, whoa, that's really, amazing. But the truth is, you're doing it constantly because you're constantly shifting from past, present, future, or parallel lives, or going into other aspects of yourself and deciding, every day or even night what you're going to participate in and how you're going to have that experience.
So you mentioned spacesuits, which kind of makes me interested. A little bit about like, okay, so that means you could be anything when you go into another dimension, right? You could be a rock, you could be a plant, a tree, an animal.
Well, they use the term spacesuit particularly for the 3D world that we're in. So the body that we're in at the moment is kind of the spacesuit. You have to have a physical body to kind of participate in. But on other realms, I mean, it's possible. Again, there are dimensions where you are putting on, like you said, other spacesuits to have those experiences. But the spirit is very malleable. It's very interchangeable. It's it's not confined to one space, and we're so used to the physical world thinking that we're defined by that space, but we're not. We're multi-dimensional.
And then I was gonna ask, can a dimension be destroyed, or like energy? Do they just like dissolve? Not dissolve. I'm sorry, evolve or transform or shift into something else.
You've been watching Marvel, I can tell.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, yes, of course they can be destroyed. And some there are planets that are actually, that die. And same thing with dimensions. And people have experiences, a multi-universes where they've had an experience where they're participating in a dimension that's disintegrating and everything around it's falling apart. And you could call that black hole. You could call it, different parts of different, layers. You could go out kabillion dimensions out, and then that's no longer, it's re-evolving, changing into a different frequency. So, and speaking of that, if you think about it, we're evolving right now. This 3D, we're moving from the 3D into the 4D. So in a way, our dimension of the way we see things or the way we're participating in things is not the same that it would be 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Right?
Constantly shifting.
It's a different experience. And the more conscious, right? We have group consciousness. So the more individuals that get into the bandwagon of the group, and more of the group that participate in the collective, right? That shifts the collective mind, which changes the way that we play by the rules in this 3D world that we're living in as well.
And I had a question and it just went whoop. Let me try it one more time. So if you mentioned earlier that they could be destroyed, right? But what if you had a great experience in a dimension and you want to go back? Is that possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You just have to match the frequency, just like your grandmother, your great grandmother that I used as the example. That's so what happens, and this is, I'm going to go into the death process just a little bit, but one of the things that happens is when we die, our family members that have passed on, or people, our friends, or animals, all they do is shift consciousness and match the frequency of their love for us. And it's like turning a television, dial or channel. We used to turn them a long time ago, and then we had buttons, but it's like changing the channel. And once they change the channel, then they see you, and then you see them. And then that frequency, then you're in that part, and then you can go on, explore whatever you want to. Again, it's unlimited. Or you can come back into the physical form in this dimension and do something else.
So essentially, that means ghosts are also, right? Ghosts are also moving into our dimension when they come back. Is that what is it like a shift from?
So your question is kind of two parts, because there's a difference between a ghost and a spirit. So ghosts are people that have gotten trapped between dimensions and are stuck and still want to be part of the 3D, but don't have a physical body to participate in. So they're still in the 3D realm. They're just on a high frequency. So we're not, bombarded with their physical bodies, but they're still participating in another dimension that's kind of bleeding through. So spirit, on the other hand, is unlimited. So once you merge into that higher frequency of yourself, the full anatomy of yourself, and let go, then you have access to not only this world, but you have access to whatever you want to play in. Like dreaming.
I love that. So really, I mean, dreaming is just one way, right, to move into and move through dimensions. Daydreaming is another one. I think people use meditation. What other ways?
Twilighting. Yeah. So there's many, and just thinking, just using your imagination. So however you plug in, because what you're doing is you're accessing information from those experiences from the other parts of the universe, or other parts of the dimensions that are participating in that thought form.
Perfect. Well, I think, Anna, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think that's good. I know that we teach dimensions in 102.
Yes.
And you might, I'm gonna say goodbye and let you finish up, but thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, dimensions are definitely taught in our 102 class, and I'm glad Anna brought that up because we do offer multiple workshops and different classes. If you're interested in taking a course with us, but you're not sure, we do have the awakening your inner into your inner power class that you can join. That's just kind of a taster if you want to just see how it is. We have our 101 and 102 Light Language University classes. Actually, we have a Light Language 101 coming up. Um, it is the 11th and 12th of June, and then we do workshops for like shamanic journeying, Akashic records, um, and spirit rescue. That's another one we kind of talked a little bit about just a few moments ago. So if you're interested in those, you can definitely check out our calendar on our website. And then our next light code portal is going to be on Wednesday, June 15th at 7 p.m. Central Time. Also, I want to say thank you all for joining us tonight. We truly appreciate you, you know, tuning in. If you're watching this and you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. We'll do our best to get them answered for you. And then Anna, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We love learning from you, and I look forward to the next time. Have a good night.